Bonjour, comment ça va? Je suis Josh. Et vous?
Here with his co-host and co-coach KG, and I don't know too much French, but I'm here and fired up.
I was doing it as a joke, but I'm going to keep it. And I know I said hello, I said my name, and then I think I said a bunch of nonsense. And this is the Fit, Healthy, Happy podcast. My French is horrible. I don't remember much of it from school, but I thought it'd be kind of funny doing something a little bit different. And we got an incredible episode for you. We got nice big coffee. The energy's here. We got some killer questions. So what more do you need? We're going to go ahead and jump into it. The first question, the primary question of today's Motivation Monday, and it's a fun one, is how do you guys deal with cutting and hunger in general? I find it so boring. Been cutting for 8 weeks and have only lost at most 6 pounds. I'm trying to lose 12 to 15 more and every pound comes off slower than the last. I lift 2 hours a day, bike consistently, but otherwise have a sedentary office job. Please help. So all too often as a coach, I help people who in their mind are doing everything right. And by all means, this individual is doing a lot right. They're lifting consistently. They have a form of cardio. They're making a point to track their calories, as they also shared with us, and their protein, but they're not seeing the loss they want. And right away, you got to say, okay, you are doing a lot of things right. What could be going wrong? And I wanted to share some of a different viewpoint as a coach too. When I see people not losing a lot, there's usually a main reason for it. And the main, most consistent thing I'll see is that tracking isn't done well. So obviously tracking your calories is super beneficial, but there's a big difference between just tracking like hamburger, if you have a hamburger, versus actually like weighing out the amount of lean beef you have, the bun you have, that you have condiments on it, and really breaking it down in more depth, ingredient by ingredient. Even every morning, like if I just freeballed my granola, I eat yogurt every day, I'd probably pour myself like 150 grams, which would be like 500 calories, but I have to limit myself to like about 80, and I really make a point to weigh it because it's so easy to be general. The peanut butter example is my favorite example of weighing. If you look at what a tablespoon of peanut butter actually is, it is quite sad. And some of these tablespoons people are having are 3 or 4 tablespoons when you do a big glob. And right away, like this can be the difference of 100 calories, but all the way up to like 3,000 calories in your day, depending on how accurately you're tracking. And on top of that, there's the metric of consistency, which is the most valuable of them all. It's all too easy to do these things 5 days, crush it Monday through Friday, doing everything right. You're going to the gym. Then the weekend comes and you just go off the deep end and you just let loose, if you will, and you go in a big surplus and you cancel out that deficit you were in during the week. So if you're not losing the weight you should be, the reality is for one reason or another, you're not in the deficit you should be, quite simply. And that's really what this comes down to. And that's something to be aware of. And the more you can kind of lean into what is preventing that deficit, the better. So first and foremost, accurately track your macros. Kyle made a good reel on this recently where if someone eats like 2,200 calories Monday through Sunday versus someone who's eating like 1,600 calories during the week and then they're well close to 3,000 on the weekends, something like that, how they're actually in more of a surplus off that weekend. The psychological effect of being off track for 2 days and having a harder time to get back into track. So by really just being consistent and trying to be more moderate with everything and utilize things like the 80-20, still enjoy treats, it's easier to actually ensure you are in this deficit. On top of that too, another thing that I find is a deficit killer is drinking. Drinking, it's easy to easily have 200, 400, 600 calories of drinks, especially if you're having like heavier drinks like beers or cocktails that will have a lot of carbs and sugars in them. This can add up really quick. And on top of that, when people tend to drink, they tend to have less control or restraint and therefore end up going on McDonald's runs at 2 a.m. And like I said, you can easily be in a deficit like this where you're eating like 2,200 calories. And then on one day where you have a big day of eating, it can easily be 4,000 or 5,000 calories and will undo a lot of that hard work and not leave you seeing the progress that you should be feeling you're seeing. Another thing on top of this too, once you get your macros on track, sometimes your rate of loss will just be not as intense as you want. And you're going to need to figure out, where do I want to create more of a deficit? So you can create more of a deficit by actually doing more output and doing more cardio, but this comes at a trade-off because you will be more hungry and it can be a little bit tougher. So you want to evaluate, is it easier to take from calories or to move more, add more activity? And I think one of the easiest things you can do in terms of adding activity is just having a basic step goal and be aware of where you are. If you're sedentary, perhaps this individual is doing 4,000 steps a day and then doing biking here and there. The biking, if it's not done consistently, it's harder to track. And if you go from 4,000, 8,000 steps, you'll find you'll lose even more weight at the same amount of calories because you're increasing your output quite significantly. So that's why I like having a general baseline with that. And I find it makes cutting easier to pinpoint and to be really consistent with. And then on top of that, my next tip too would just be increasing the volume of your food. It makes it a lot easier to have adherence. So whenever I'm cutting, I'll really double down on having more veggies, having more low calorie, really delicious foods and larger portions of that, as well as having really high fiber foods and more water. Because when you have this, it's going to actually make you feel more full. Same with protein, and it's going to help you get through it better than if you're eating foods that won't sate you as much. Like if you're eating like big juicy burgers or really oily things or really fatty meats, like things that are quite caloric per the portion size, and you're like, how the heck is this so much calories? So those are kind of my top tips, but I think really evaluating your situation and saying like, what are the holes in my game here? And for most people, 9 out of 10, it's consistency. You'll notice I didn't say add excessive cardio. Cardio can be a tool that can be used, but with clients, I find it's like more of a last resort because I find time is so scarce right now, and it's also a lot of energy and output to actually devote a lot of time to dedicated cardio, and I find the push from it doesn't really battle out with the pull. So those are my top advice. Curious what Kyle has to add.
And even adding on to that, I find sometimes when people add more cardio, then they'll take away from other areas which they should be focusing on. So strength training will be the greatest thing for your overall body composition and, long-term fat loss. So it's going to be you know how important strength training is. I always talk about it, but I find when some people will be like, I got to do an hour of cardio today, then their strength training gets brought down. I know someone who recently said that too. They're like, I needed to do the Stairmaster, so I skipped my workout. I'm like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose. Like, I'd rather you do the strength training. And so with all that, I think one of the greatest takeaways here is that I'll say most people, I don't want to say 100%, but I'd say maybe 70 to 80% of the people who aren't losing as fast as they should be, they really aren't in that deficit like Josh said. And I know this because I've seen a lot of people's day-to-day. So when I ask them specific questions, when we take a look at MyFitnessPal, when I kind of get down to the root of like maybe they have kids, so they'll have little things throughout the day that they didn't allocate into their MyFitnessPal and they didn't remember that they had it. You may go to Costco and say, hey, I'm going to try the samples because I'm so hungry and have hundreds of calories there. I heard someone recently, they said it was bites, licks, and something else. Like those things add up a ton. And so even from that point of view, but then also measuring cups, scales, like it shouldn't take away from your life, but more so hold you accountable. That's the way I look at logging. That's the way I look at using these measurement tools, is just to say, hey, Kyle, you're not actually in that deficit like you thought. Like it kind of calls you out. I'm drinking a coffee right now. Could be 80 calories, or it could be 0 if I got no milk or anything, or it could be 200. And I know sometimes people have 600 when they go to Starbucks and they get their frappuccinos and all that other stuff that they may be like, oh, it's liquid, I'm not going to count it. So if I were to just give one piece of advice, it's spend that time, use those extra few minutes. Even an example I shared recently, I got some granola myself to try to add calories in because I'm trying to bulk up, and I put it on the scale, and it's like a granola cereal, like not I wouldn't usually have stuff like this, but I was like, I'll add it in because it's actually going to help me when I looked at the calories, and I put it in, and it was like maybe like 1/3 of like the entire bowl, and it was over 400 calories, and it's just funny because it reminded me of how often it is to just like kind of use your eyeballs and try to think like, I'm going to just see what it is. And then just you're never accurate with that. And the last thing I'll say, because I'm not going to talk about replacing fat with muscle, because too many people use that as an excuse. They're like, we can do body compositions. It's something we specialize in, and we help keeping track of all the metrics and all that great stuff. It's 100% true. But a lot of people, when they're not losing, they'll just say, I'm replacing it all with muscle, and they're not actually sure if they are. We have measurement tools to be able to help them, and that's what we do for our clients. Very often people aren't able to keep track of situations where it's unknown. So Josh and myself have spent a lot of time over the years to figure out how can we give the best tips possible for eating out, for being social, for being on the go. Because I know a lot of people, similar to what Josh was saying about the weekend warrior, they'll be really good during the week, and then when it comes to like special events, they'll be like, hey, I was in a deficit, but then they actually weren't because they just don't put their calories into the spreadsheet. They're just not sure what to put in there. And I also want to give you something completely free today. So down below, it's going to be the second link. If you want a free fast food survival guide, it's going to help you understand how to navigate at a restaurant when you go to eat and you're just going to a fast food joint, and it just makes the process a lot easier so you can see progress quicker and actually know what's going on. There's tons of great tips that I think you'll really benefit from. So make sure to grab that. No strings attached. I think you'll really enjoy it. Second link down below.
Yeah, and I really want to circle back to what Kyle said too. It's like actually doing what's a mover. So we love the analogy too, obviously, as business owners, of the concept of busy work. It's real easy to do things like make you feel good, do basic checkbox tasks, things that aren't actually going to move you forward. But if you really analyze in your journey, like, what do I need to do? What is the big mover here? And to Kyle's point, like, it feels amazing instead of doing like a 20-minute half weightlifting training session to go on the Stairmaster, because you're like, you're breathing after, you're sweaty, you feel like I killed it today. But all you're really doing is burning like effectively 100, 200 calories, if even, and you're just probably going to go eat it right back. Unfortunately, it's not going to create compositional change. And that's where really analyzing like what is a big mover. And that's why we're on our buddy. Like, he'll say, I was in a pinch, I only had an hour. And you're like, we could have lifted in this hour instead of just doing the Stairmaster, a 20-minute sauna, and then a really long shower. Like, I would so much rather see him lift weights for 50 minutes than for 10 minutes, go to a shower, get ready. And like, that would create more long-term change, because that's going to help him develop his composition. So if you're not losing the weight you are, it could be misdirected efforts. And an example of this would be eating super healthy, but eating too much food, or falling off in the weekend, as I mentioned, not actually sticking to a weight training regimen, not actually training hard enough in the gym. If you have a good session, like if I go in there and I just mess around and I just go through the motions, I could probably burn 200 calories in 60 minutes. Keep in mind, this isn't a perfect scale, but when I really push myself, and on this imperfect scale that is my Apple Watch, the 200 could easily be 800 if I really bring it. I'm really making it count. Now, is it 100% to the point, 600 calories? Absolutely not. But as a metric, that extra output is going to help me further see compositional changes versus me just haphazardly going in there and just going through the motions.
Yeah, well said. And honestly, I think so many people are struggling. And I think this is really, it's just time to evaluate. If you're not seeing the results, it's like, why is that? And I just want to say this before we get into the quotes. If you are struggling and you're listening to this and you're just like, man, like, I just can't seem to get it, you're just not wasting your time, but it's time that you make that change. It's time that you reach out for help. I know we've talked about it a few times, but right now, Black Friday, it is coming to an end for us because we like to reward action takers. So this is going to be one of your last opportunities to reach out. All you have to do is send us a message on Instagram with the keyword Black Friday. I can promise you this is going to be the greatest deal you'll ever see us give, and you're going to finally be able to make that change. If you're in a plateau, if you're not feeling great day to day, if you're not feeling confident, your energy's low, it's time to make that change. We'll take care of everything, all the guesswork, with guaranteed results, so there's no risk involved, and I can't wait to hear and help. I can't wait to hear from some of you awesome people and help those of you who are going to be action takers.
Change is a message away. Don't pass this one up. But now we're going to go ahead and jump into our quotes. Always a lot of fun here. So I have a series of quotes, something I've been doing lately. I think it's because we've been firing so many amazing quotes out on these Motivation Mondays for a couple of years now, which is cool. Even nearing on 600 episodes. Like, it's really awesome just seeing how the podcast has grown. So really want to thank everyone for tuning along. It's been great just innovating it and continuing to push it forward. So my quote, quite simply, originally was, rule your mind or it will rule you. And then I wanted to add on to that with, the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And I just think there's so much you can pull from this, because your mind in general can be your best friend or your worst enemy. If we just run around like puppies doing the things we want, we're going to run around from point A to B, eating whatever we want, putting off all our work, and it's ultimately going to make us feel worse. But I think the more you can build discipline and build habits and understand that through some struggle comes benefit, and it's going to help you grow as a human being. And when you can shift that mindset, it can be really powerful. And that's where I love that component of the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And it can help steer you either into trouble or away from trouble. And I think a good example of this too, and something that was pretty interesting, just like even being aware of it. And this is where like meditation, other things can be good, but it's quite easy just to be super hungry and just to be angry as a result of it. And just to get really short with people, or maybe out of bad sleep. So you get really grumpy and you're yelling at people at work or whatever it may be. But I think a higher level understanding of that is being able to say, hey, listen, like, I'm just really upset right now because I had a bad sleep. I don't feel good. I'm not going to take this out on other people. So in anything you do, to be able to do that, and I mentioned this with fitness as well, like if you're really sad, to say, I'm just sad right now, I don't actually want to eat a lot of food, that's going to make me feel a lot worse. So I'm not going to entertain that. That's an example of ruling your mindset and being on top of that. And I just think that shift is so impactful and really will be a big mover. So even that concept of like hurt people, I think is a big thing. Even we have a hockey example. We play hockey a little bit, and people in general, it's really chirpy. People are always kind of coming at each other. Always gets a little bit crazy. But in general, like if you switch it up and you just try to say, hey, I'm sorry. Like when you do something that it's a little bit chippy, or you just, someone chirps you, say something nice to them, it's amazing how it can diffuse it like a bomb. And I think even understanding like, where will this go? Like if you're in a tough situation, you're like, is what I'm doing going to make it any better or make it worse? And we've used the example of like road rage. Someone cuts you off, you want to go blare your horn at them, cut them back off. And it's like, you're leading toward getting in a crash, a physical alteration, or something worse with this person. It's like, you're not going to teach them a lesson. Like there's no way you're going to teach them a lesson, especially if someone just frankly is an idiot. You're not going to teach them anything. So as hard as it is for your ego to let it go, like that higher level understanding of like, I'm going to rule my mind, I'm going to let this go, is actually so much better for you because you're avoiding all that pain, and like there's just nothing that can come with it. So a little bit more of an intense one, but I think the more you can kind of have that higher level thought, that fly on the wall type mentality, and that same concept of like, if it was a friend, what advice would you give them? And look at yourself that same way too.
Yeah, it's funny because like a while back I was telling Josh, like I was playing some hockey, and he had such a good, it's a good example because it can kind of relate to anything in life. Like if you're at the grocery store and someone, just happens to cut in front, and you're just kind of like, how do I approach this? Like what's the best way to navigate, right? And I'm someone who doesn't like confrontation, but then there will be times even in hockey I'll be like, man, what is this person doing? Like why do they have to stick you or do whatever it is? And ever since I started just like going in with the mindset of just like complimenting people, it's actually like hilarious. Like I would just like, I'd get tripped up or whatever, and be like, nice play, dude. And they're looking like expecting me to like lose it on them. I'm like, it's all good, man. Like I'm all good. I'm having a good time. We're chilling with the buddies. And it's a really cool mindset shift, because not only is it beneficial for everyone around you, but also just for yourself. Like you just feel so much better. So I really like that. Here I've got a quote. I've got two as well. I couldn't pick just one, but the first one is, stop for a moment and celebrate how far you've come. So I'm such a big fan of this. I saw the other day, I was on Instagram, and there was like a big stop sign that just like, it was kind of indicating like stop. And then it was just saying, hey, take a second to think about it. So I always like looking back, and I saw something that I've shared before. It was like, 10 years ago, like the, version of yourself right now would be so happy, like, and whatever that is, it could be where you're at with your relationships, maybe your promotions with work, and you'll find something. I know sometimes things may not even feel like it's going your way, but I can promise you that if you sit down and you think about it, you will find some things. The fitness journey is a very easy thing to celebrate, especially for those of you who are taking action. And that brings me into my second one, which is kind of relatable, is just, it was from Ed Milet. He said it was kind of just a thing he said, so I turned it into a bit of a quote. It was, your one meeting or one podcast or one, he didn't say workout, but I'm going to add workout, away from a completely different life, or you're one action away from a completely different life. So however you look at that, I look at every opportunity as taking a shot, taking a swing as well. If you want to use baseball terms, every single thing you do, it's an opportunity to a completely different life. And even I was just talking about coaching, like the people who reach out and they say, hey, I'm going to do it, the rest of their life is going to be changed. And I don't say that, lightly. It's so true. Like that one initial act of just saying, hey, Kyle and Josh, I want to learn more. That is going to be a completely different life. In 1 year from now, you could be 60 pounds down. You could be 20 pounds down, but then you gain 10 pounds of muscle. Your relationships could be better. Obviously, I'm talking about coaching because I firmly believe it, and it's what we do for a living. But also even a meeting, if you decide to sit down with someone who is, going to help you in one way or another, cool. But at the same time, there may be some of these things you do and it leads to nothing. And what do you lose? You lose a bit of time, right? And even for podcasting, like the day that Josh said, hey, listen, we're going to get these microphones and I'm going to figure this out, life is completely changed. Same with YouTube. So I like the analogy of just the more shots you take, the luckier you get. The more swings you get, the luckier you are at getting a home run, right? If you don't ever swing the bat, nothing's ever going to happen. So that's going to be my quote, and hopefully it helps you in some way or another.
Yeah, now we're going to go ahead and jump into our thoughts, and not so much of a thought, but as a statement. But our website actually got hacked, which is kind of annoying. So they just made it so you couldn't really use it, which is absolutely brutal. But we're getting that all fixed up. I believe it should be fixed when this episode went out. But if for some reason you tried to look at it, my apologies there. It should be back in order soon. It's been terrorizing us a bit, but these things happen. These hiccups pop up. You just got to sort them through. And if ever something like that doesn't work, you can always reach us on Instagram. I mean, as long as Instagram doesn't go down, that is. But also, too, if you haven't been following us, we always do a lot of fun stuff. Black Friday going on, like Kyle said, the best time to ever get started with coaching. Christmas is around the corner, and we always like to do some fun giveaways and different things like that. So if you're not following, as always, I say it for a reason. We post really good content. We spend a lot of time there. So a lot of value to be had. Make sure to follow us at ColossusFit, ColossusFit. And I also get asked often, hey, how can I submit a question for this podcast? Which I guess is a question in and of itself. But I always tell people the best way is on Instagram. We can organize it nice from there. We're always in the DMs, and come chat with me and Kyle, ask your questions, big or small. There are no dumb questions, but that's it for me and my thoughts. What do you got, Kyle?
I just have written down here, every single set and every single rep matters. So I know you guys probably know I'm doing a bench press competition January 1st against someone. We've got some money on the line. And the way that I look at things right now as I'm training is just like, I don't want to get to January 1st and think, man, I missed out on a workout, a rep, a set, and every single rep will matter. Like, I don't like losing. Some of you may know that if you've spent some time on with us on the podcast. It's just, that's the way I am. But if I were to get to a point where I lose, but I've given my best I've put my best foot forward and my best effort, I'll be okay with that. Once again, like I said, I'm not going to sit there and be happy about it, but I think a lot of times it's easy to shortchange ourselves. And now every single time I've been into the gym lately, even if it's like a set where I'm thinking I might fail, obviously it's nice having Josh there because he can help me, but I'm like, I still want to give it my best shot forward. Like if I have 5 sets of 8 and it's just the most insane thing ever, I may take an extra minute rest, but I want to get it done. So once again, when it comes to that testing day, like me to look back and say I've done absolutely everything I can, that's all I can really ask. And for those of you on your journey, you have to ask yourself, like, am I actually putting my best foot forward? Am I missing workouts? Am I not logging some days? Am I not logging meals? And when you don't get to that result, it's kind of easy to look back and be like, well, I didn't give it my best foot forward. But if you do, and you treat every workout, every meal, everything like it matters, you'll get to your end goal. And that's going to be my last thing here.
Yeah, and adding on top of that, there's definitely an opportunity to give yourself the best possibility situation to succeed. An example of that is having a coach. If you're struggling by yourself and there's just no nobility in trying to figure it out by yourself, if it's not working, it's not working. Like we've devoted our entire life to like helping other people succeed, people just like you who perhaps it feels like you have this exotic, impossible situation, but having fresh eyes on it, having an expert there to say, hey, we can fix this, we can spend more time here, you don't need to worry about this, and this is actually going to be way better. Like it just, lights can go off, it can make that whole process easier and better, and you're just missing out if you're not taking advantage of it. So once again, give yourself that benefit, help yourself, be there for yourself. It goes such a long way. And let's reach out to someone who's been absolutely killing it. Like our client shout out today, I was blown away when I saw these photos. I'm like, dang, absolutely crushing it. So who do we got?
Yeah, so we have Gracia, who's been working with Coach Jason, Josh's brother. And I just like, the first thing I'll say, kind of tying my journey into hers, is like, when you're emotionally attached, it gets so tough. So even for me, having Josh be able to give me consistent feedback, because like there's times I'm in my head, I'm like, man, should I increase calories, decrease? Like, you know, what about cardio, even my bench press routine and my workouts? Like he can give me input like non-emotionally attached. So it's very helpful. But enough about me. I wanted to talk about Gracia. So she's been crushing it. She just posted recently. It was her 30th birthday, and her photos just keep getting better and better. But also her mindset, her work ethic, her strength, every single part of her life, even the way she interacts. Like she's got a young one. She's super busy with work. Like I just love the fact that, simply put, when you're dialed in on your journey, people think like this whole workout, all this other stuff, getting up early takes life away from you. But I can promise you it adds to it. Even for her, she's always up super early, probably before most people, in the gym, getting after it, taking care of everything that she needs to do. So she deserves another shout out. We have shared it before, but it's just, consistently growing, and she's someone who's always investing in herself. She's always looking to take things to the next level. So we are so proud of this. Make sure, once again, Instagram, we share her tips, some things she has to say about the program, her photos, so you can see some visuals. And huge shout out. I know she's listening to this because she's always dialed in, listening to everything we put out there. So huge shout out to Gracia and Coach Jason.
Huge shout out. Absolutely awesome transformation. Go share some love on Instagram. Once again, it's just great seeing other people win, and we look forward to helping you win as well, because trust me, it doesn't need to be that hard, and amazing results in your best self is just one message away. So hit us up on Instagram with that keyword Black Friday, and we talk about it because we're passionate about it. You know us, we're not here peddling random supplements, random ads. We get offered a lot of different opportunities and a lot of money to do that, but we just don't believe in it, and we believe in our coaching. We believe in it so much so that it's your success, your money back, and there's a reason we have a 98% success rate, and that's because we've broken down every barrier to stop people from getting results, and we teach you how to integrate it into your life so you can do this for the long term. So make that investment in yourself because you are worth it. But we're going to go to our second question. What protein snacks do you like during the day? So we asked this one, we answer this one periodically, but I always think it's fun giving some fresh tips and advice, because protein stuff, it's hard to get a lot of protein, especially if you're going from being very low protein to being higher protein. My advice is always the same. Get in early, get in consistently with every meal, and make it a priority. It makes it a lot easier. So for myself, I'll have a lot of protein with my breakfast. And a lot of people say, how do you get like almost 50 grams of protein from a breakfast? Keep in mind, I do Greek yogurt, but I do about 700 calories worth with everything else I put in. So I'm getting like some from the granola, like a minuscule amount, some from the hemp, once again, minuscule amount. But I will do like 300 grams of Greek yogurt, just completely pure, like 0%. And from that, I think I get like 20 something, low 30s, but it nets out to being just about 50, which works for me, having about 205 grams a day, give or take. So usually I'll start with a really high protein breakfast. I'll do some form of that. In the past, I've done oatmeal. I've done with a protein scoop. I've done smoothies. I've done a lot of different things, but the caveat with me is I'm not really a protein snack type of person. Lately, I've just been loving just having big meals, and it's something I've enjoyed more personally. I know a lot of people really do like snacking, and when I'm cutting, sometimes I actually like to snack a bit more. So some of my go-tos have been more, I guess, augmented or supplemented type forms of protein. So I mentioned Quest chips. I think it's a great way to get that chip, salty, midday kind of fun thing with just getting some protein. Caveats, obviously, is they can be a little salty. They can be quite expensive. So that can be a downside, but I do find that's probably one of my favorites. Past that, even another really fun grab and go, and these are both available at Costco, are those Fairlife protein shakes. Basically, most protein powders, if you don't know, isolate, whatever, is just a derivative of milk, and it's just a portion of that. And the more pure it is, and the more like towards isolate it is, it's just more purified. And that's why someone who's lactose, something that's more purified, will usually be higher in protein and have less lactose. And that's why I kind of hack the system being lactose. I turn it, my negative into my positive, by having these more purified sources that will be purified of the lactate. They're actually denser in protein. So I'll have like high protein cheeses like Allegro, which I'll have as a snack all the time. And like you can actually get like 30 grams from cheese, very low calorie. It's very high in protein. I'll also do like those shakes, which can be a good on the go type thing. But it's funny, people take those things like crack when they're at the Costco. It's funny how much they sell out. I know people really like the chocolate ones too, but they're quite good if you need something quick. I don't supplement with a ton of protein because I just eat a lot of lean meat with my meals. And I found that's what works best for me, and that's what makes me feel best. So I do lean towards that more than anything else. I do sometimes, as weird as it is, like I'll have Greek yogurt as a snack with even maybe a little bit more granola. Sometimes I'll make it a little bit more fun by adding more honey, adding peanut butter. Like, it's a very simple but a very effective way to go about it. It's just incredibly filling. So that is something I personally have quite enjoyed to do. Past that, I can't, beef jerky is always a fun one too. I'll have that periodically, but I find personally I don't need a ton of quote unquote snacks. Those are some of my favorites. Some of my favorites from my clients that I know are like egg white bites. I know that's a fantastic option to really just pack in some protein as a snack. I know some people do protein coffees, which I've never personally tried. I know some people swear by it. I like to keep those things separate, but those are just a couple that immediately come to my mind.
Yeah, honestly, like I've kind of switched my mindset over the last little while with snacks. Like I do have some, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But I think the first thing is like if you always feel the need to be having a ton of shakes and like always trying to supplement or kind of just have those snacks. I think the first thing I would do is just like sit down and look at your schedule and your day and kind of see where maybe you're missing some. Because even Coach Armando recently, he actually did a Reels, which is shared on our Instagram too. And he showed kind of a different like approach. So like, let's say if you're having 100 and let's say you have 3 meals, it could just be 3 servings of 40 grams. If you're having 120 grams a day, that would obviously not be what, 200-pound male would have, but that would be more of like a leaner female. Even, when you break it down, like it's awesome to look at each kind of like meal within the day and think, okay, 30 grams, 30, 30, or 40, 40, 40, or in our cases, it's going to be usually 50, 50, 50. And so it's like not always going to be accurate, but I would really start with looking at each meal and see, because you might notice like even for dinner, if you maybe don't have the protein source, you might realize, oh, like, I'm having a lot of carbs and fats here. So I really try to have whole meals, and obviously it depends on your calorie intake. Like right now I'm having quite a bit more, so it's just a lot easier. I know sometimes when you're in a bigger deficit, you might need to have some more stuff. Armando's got a list here as well. He said chicken breast, lean ground beef. That's something I've been having more of lately too, as I'm on a bulk. Like I've been having less chicken. I'll have chicken for lunch when we have our lunches, but dinner, I've been enjoying some lean ground beef. I find I can get extra calories and it's still a great source of protein. Here he has tilapia, egg whites, tenderloin pork, flank steak. Like there's a lot of really good whole food options. Now, what I will say is the way I look at protein snacks and supplements is it's more of like when I'm in a pinch. And lately I find I have been. So I've really like, instead of just grabbing whatever it is I'd grab, maybe a chocolate bar at the gas station, I wouldn't do that. But I'm like, I don't want to put myself in a position where I need to like grab something or I'm tempted to. So even last night I brought a pure protein bar to our racing sim. I was lower on calories. I was in a bit of a rush getting back from where I was at during the day. And then I only had time for one meal prep. So I grabbed my protein bar and it was fantastic. And I think that's where some people go wrong, is they feel the need to always be having a ton of this stuff. And I'll use those Fairlife shakes and my pure protein bars as like hey, I'm going to the hospital and I didn't have a bunch of stuff. So instead of grabbing garbage, now I'm going to be prepared. And I think that's something that you can really utilize with these snacks, is it's not like an everyday occurrence, but it's like, hey, I'm going to toss these in. So I would say between pure protein bars and Fairlife shakes, those are the 2 things I have in my house currently, and I will be utilizing as life gets busy with a little one. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, lean into what you like. We recently posted some reels on some of our top protein sources. Actually, we have one ready to go, I realized, so we'll post that in the coming days. I just posted like 5 things I grabbed from the grocery store that I didn't include in this, so maybe I'll leave that as something for you to look forward to. So that will be posted. But as weird as it is, even like one day you got time and you're grocery shopping, like it's fun to poke around, look at everything that says high protein. Kyle recently shared like Vector cereal, which says high protein. And it's very deceiving because it's like half the posted amount, if not less, because it says the amount of protein includes is with milk. So it's very misleading in that sense, where milk is actually more protein based type of thing. So look at the different things. Some things say high protein and they're like horrible. Some things do, and they're actually like great source of protein. And like by poking around, you can kind of find what you like. You'll try some things, be like, this is disgusting, I hate these. Some things, be like, ooh, I love this, like I'm going to get this more, and it can work more with you. So I think really just figuring out what you like and then having options in a pinch is just absolutely fantastic. But last but not least is, what are some exercises to fix my posture?
Yeah, fantastic question. I know a lot of people are interested in this because it's so easy to just not have great posture, and like it affects you day to day. Like most people don't realize you have bad posture, your upper neck starts to bother you, your core is like weak. Like there's a lot of different contributing factors. I wouldn't say as much an exercise, but I would say muscle groups to focus on. So we always do rear delts. That's one thing that I know a lot of people skip out on, because they're always, especially guys, they're focused on like building up the front of your shoulder and the side with like lateral raises and front raises and shoulder press. But doing rear delt type movements, we're about to post a rear delt exercise from Coach Jason on YouTube, which is rear delt skiers. And then also we do cross arm cable flies. We also do face pulls, which are fantastic. So I would say once you do those movements on top of really focusing on your posterior chain, so like anything glute related will be fantastic. Hip thrusts, Bulgarian split squats, anything hamstring related, hamstring curls, stiff leg deadlifts. Like you really want to focus on like those kind of those back muscles, especially because I find that for guys specifically, like they'll do so much chest, like within an entire week, they'll do like 3 times the chest to like their other muscle groups such as legs or back or other things like that. And then they're just like wondering why they don't have the greatest posture. But aside from that, I would say like not only exercise wise, just like have a reminder, like really just keep your core tight. And that's another thing is you build up your core strength. It'll help a ton. You can do any movements really. Like we have a ton of different ones that we always showcase on Instagram. Cable crunches are great. Leg raises are great. Anything of that nature just to strengthen your core. Planks will be great. And then just, keep your chest up, keep your core tight. Like those are going to be my biggest tips for posture, but I'm sure Josh has some more as well.
Yeah, I think those are honestly great. Like in general for posture, if you start lifting strong and really make a conscious effort just to get stronger, to work your body totally and just really have good glute strength, really just have good posterior chain strength in general, walk a lot more, try to really minimize sitting, try to lay down, stand more when you can. Like I find you can correct it pretty quickly if you're a decently fit person. If you have like serious issues, you need to like address why your posture's all messed up. Like if your back's messed up, like Kyle said, you're gonna need to work in and around that. A lot of people have super tight hips. Like once again, just by doing nice full ranges of motion and really challenging yourself within that, like you can correct it pretty quickly. So I feel like it can be a little bit overblown, the whole posture thing, and like it isn't really all that hard to fix, like just by actually training heavy. And once again, like I know it sounds a little crazy, but it is the reality. And you have to think too, if you're sitting like 12 hours a day, like your forces against you, and if you're lifting like twice a week, you're gonna be struggling there. Like you can pretty easily fix it though by just being aware of that, training a bit heavier, minimizing some of that time. And obviously a big part of our life is sitting right now. It's a reality we have, but once again, as long as you're doing something against that, it'll level out pretty quick.
Yeah, that was so well said. A lot of people are just really looking for that quick fix there to get some specific movements, but I've never really thought about it aside from like the day-to-day, like, hey, I'm hunching forward a bit too much, or like using your phone, you're always looking down a ton, so then your neck can be affected and you have to really, catch yourself, right? But yeah, that was a great answer there. Once again, if you are looking to get to the next level, do not put it off. Don't wait until the new year. Don't wait until Thanksgiving's done. You deserve to feel your best day to day. If you've made it to this part of the episode, I want to give you a shout out because, I can tell you're a real one. And if you haven't invested in yourself with us, like if you like our free content, you enjoy our reels, our quick tips, our podcasts, I promise you will love the paid stuff. Don't miss out. Send us a message Black Friday on Instagram. And thank you so much for spending time with us today. We'll see you in the next video and episode.